If you are struggling from social anxiety, like I did for a very long time, you are definitely not alone, because about 7%, so about every 14th person, experiences a very strong phase of social anxiety during her lifetime. So we are not talking about just being a little bit nervous before a public speech, but we are talking about severe social anxiety, which means that social interactions become so threatening that at some point or another you will start to avoid more and more social interactions, and it has a very strong impact on your life. Fortunately, there is more and more very good research about which strategies actually help to overcome social anxiety. And in today's video, I want to present some of the best strategies that also helped myself to overcome my social anxiety. The first strategy comes from Metacognitive Therapy. It is about switching your attention from the inside, from your self-awareness, to the outside. Because many studies could show that maybe the biggest problem for people with social anxiety is that so many thoughts, so much cognitive capacity is invested into monitoring yourself, into how you are perceived by other people, that this cognitive capacity is actually missing for many social interactions. So for example, when you're talking to a stranger or even to a friend and you are constantly asking yourself, how am I perceived? How am I presenting myself right now? Do I smile enough? And all these questions, if all your attention gets captured by these thoughts, of course, sometimes it will be very difficult to follow a normal dialogue, to concentrate on what the other person is saying. And therefore we sometimes get the impression, well, somehow I have this kind of attention deficit and therefore social interactions are so difficult. But in fact, we don't really have a real attention deficit. We are intelligent enough to follow this dialogue, but we are putting too much energy, too much attention into this monitoring. And therefore it is very helpful to switch your attention to, for example, what the other person is actually saying. Or if you're giving a speech in front of a huge group of people, like I'm doing right now, you should not be focused on how am I looking right now, do I smile enough, but instead focus on the content you want to present, focus on how you have to present this content to the audience so that they can get the most out of it. So stop wasting your attention, your cognitive capacities, by focusing on yourself, monitoring yourself, and switch the attention to the outside. And in one study, for example, it was even enough to tell participants to focus on the wall, which was on the opposite side of the room, when they felt that again they were focusing on themselves. And even this was already helping them. And I know in the beginning it sounds very logical that this actually might work, but you don't really know how to do it. And therefore in metacognitive therapy there is the so-called attention training technique, in which you learn to switch your attention from different spots. For example, at the moment you are probably listening to my voice. Maybe you already drifted away, but let's assume you are still listening to my voice. But as you are listening, you could also concentrate on something else. Maybe you can also hear some birds, or maybe you hear some cars driving past you, or anything else. And in this attention training, you will learn to switch from one to another, and you realize, well, I can do it whenever I want. We have what we call selective attention, and therefore you have the ability to focus your attention on whatever you want. And that this is really very helpful for people with social anxiety could be shown in several new studies in which the metacognitive therapy was actually more effective than the normal cognitive behavioral therapy, the normal CBT. Strategy number 2, or let's say tip number 2, is to know the spotlight effect and the illusion of transparency. The spotlight effect means that we often believe that all the lights are shining on us, all the lights of attention are shining on us, and everybody's always observing what we do. And this is actually far from truth. We overestimate, and this could be shown in several studies as well. For example, in a study in which participants had to put on a T-shirt with the picture of a famous person, and then they had to enter a room with other people, and shortly afterwards they were asked, well, what do you believe how many people remember which famous person was on your T-shirt? And many participants said, well, probably a lot of them will remember what is on my T-shirt. But when they actually had asked the people in this room, almost nobody could remember what was on the T-shirt of this person. So we overestimate how much attention we get and how much other people remember us. And think about it, when you go through the city, how many people are looking on their smartphone, how many people are following their own agenda. They are not that much interested in us, and we are definitely not in the spotlight as much as we tend to believe. So this is some kind of illusion we fall for. And another illusion that we fall for is the illusion of transparency. We believe that other people can look through us. They know what we feel, they know what we think, but actually this is far from true. Of course, if somebody is very nervous, of course you can observe it and you can say, well, this person is probably nervous. But if the level of nervousness is quite medium, chances are that other people don't realize at all that you are nervous. And therefore, this is also some kind of illusion, which for people with social anxiety sometimes can make situations very difficult, because the moment they feel nervous, they think other people realize that they are nervous, and therefore they become more nervous. And to know that other people don't realize that you are nervous can be very helpful. And that could be shown in studies as well. When people are informed about the illusion of transparency, but also if they are informed about the spotlight effect, later on they perform better in social interactions, even if they have to give a speech, because it's liberating to realize, well, other people do not really care as much about me as I thought, and they even don't realize as much as I thought that I am nervous. The next strategy is about how you interpret your body signals. And this is something that really helped me a lot in many situations, because in experiments it could be shown that when people who had to give a speech were told, well, try to tell yourself that you are excited instead of saying yourself, well, I am anxious, or instead of saying yourself, well, I am calm or I am relaxed. And when they did so, when they told themselves, well, I am excited, they performed much better, for example, in giving public speeches, or for example, in karaoke. So you are reframing the signals of your body, which before you were telling yourself, well, I am really anxious and I'm really afraid of this situation. And now you're reframing it as, well, I am actually excited. And maybe this is some kind of positive excitement. And actually, on the level of our body, there is not a very big difference between the signals we have when we are afraid and the signals that we have when we are excited. And that's probably the reason why this strategy works that well, and it works much better than telling yourself, well, I am relaxed. Because this is something that feels quite wrong, because if you're telling yourself I am relaxed, but you feel in your body that actually you are definitely not relaxed, then you realize, well, my strategy to calm me down by telling myself I am calm, I am relaxed, does not work at all. And this, on the other hand, might increase your anxiety again. So therefore, it's much better to tell yourself, well, I am excited, because this is a good and believable reappraisal. And the last tip I want to present to you is about your mindset for exposures, for situations in which you have to face your social anxiety. For example, if you have difficult phone calls, if you have to talk to strangers, if you have to give a speech. The best mindset for all these situations is to see them as therapy. View them as some kind of confrontation therapy. Because if you cultivate this kind of growth mindset, chances are that with every confrontation, your anxiety will become less and less. And this is something that, for example, could be shown in a famous study by Southworth and Kirsch, in which anxiety patients who had strong anxiety of leaving the house, so they were agoraphobics and they were afraid that, for example, that they might have a panic attack in the public, and therefore they avoided leaving the house completely. But for this study, the agoraphobics had to leave the house with therapists, and they had to walk as far as possible until they said, well, I can no longer stand the anxiety, we have to stop it here. But one group was told, well, all these walks with you, they are just for diagnose. We just want to know how strong your anxiety is, and later on, when we know how strong your anxiety is, we will start the therapy. The second group was told, well, all these walks, they are your therapy. This actually is already your confrontation therapy. And later on, when they compared the groups, first of all, it could be shown that in comparison to an untreated control condition, the two active groups experienced much less anxiety. So once again, it could be shown that confrontation therapy led to less anxiety. But what was much more interesting was that those participants who had been told, well, those walks are your therapy, those later on in another walk were able to endure, were able to lengthen their walks much longer than the participants who had been told, well, all these walks were just for diagnostical reasons. So if you are facing your social anxiety, this mindset, this growth mindset in which you view every confrontation, every encounter with other people as therapeutical, can be extremely effective. I hope you found this episode helpful, and if you want, we will see you next time.